watching the world's most intense job interview. It's Dana White's Contender Series.
Future stars are vying for that UFC contract. They have a chance, literally, to change their lives forever.
After the long hours in the gym.
Oh, that's it. That is it.
After the years of grueling training.
What determination they have.
After a lifetime pursuing hopes and dreams. There comes the moment where a contender can make dreams come true. 100 fighters.
Welcome to the Contender Series. These fighters know what gets them to the big show.
10 nights.
One shot and it is over. Wow.
Oh, he's out.
That's it. Action-packed.
One shot to impress the boss and earn a UFC contract. This is Dana White's Contender Series.
Tuesday night in Las Vegas, and it is still scorching hot outside. But for the last time this year, the air conditioning that we're seeking right now is inside the UFC Apex. This is what we think is going to be the final episode of the Contender Series this season. We know that for the third season, it is the 10th and final episode. But as of last week, we found out we thought we might have some more series coming this year, and Dana White kind of backed off and said, listen, maybe the matchmakers were right. We're going to have to tone it back a little bit. Maybe we don't do a second run. To me, I think, kind of sad, but I think honestly a wise decision.
Me too, kind of supplies being depleted was the underlining tone I think we got from the matchmakers, and that message eventually to Dana White, who, like you said, was very enthusiastic to bring back a second one. But they say absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? So there's that.
There you go. Well, John Morgan, Dan Tom from MMA Junkie inside the UFC Apex. And listen, at the end of the day, Dana White is a fight fan just like us. He's a junkie. He could watch fights every Tuesday night. We could too, but it is right. We've gone through 100 fighters this season at the end of this episode tonight. You got to give the talent pool a little time to restock. Just to give you a heads up on what we've done so far this year, 27 contracts already awarded this season. That is a ton of new faces in the UFC. We did have one developmental deal as well, and I think we've got a pretty good lineup tonight as well. We've got kind of an international feel to it. We've got 5 undefeated fighters on it, 78 total victories between the prospects that we have this evening, but we'll get to all the fights in a second, but I think it's kind of the main and co-main event that you and I are both looking forward to the most tonight.
Yeah, I was kind of tempering my hopes. We've seen it last season. Sometimes they'll bring back names, whether it's a popular name like a Greg Hardy or even unpopular names. We've seen that rotation. I feel like the matchmakers like to leave it open for that. But if you look at this lineup tonight, it's almost like they were planning to save their best for last, because this is the one I'm honestly, no hyperbole, most excited for, John.
I do kind of feel that way. Last week was a little bit slow. I guess we only had one contract awarded, and I think that's kind of what prompted Dana White to say, okay, maybe we'd have to slow down a little bit. But you're right. I think we're going to get a handful out of them tonight. Let's jump right into it. Fight number 1 tonight will take place in the featherweight division. It is downtown TJ Brown versus Dylan Lockhart. TJ Brown, let's talk about him a little bit because he's interesting. He is the favorite here at minus 170, but he comes with a 13-6 career record, right? So he's a pro since 2013. That 13-6 career record, not something that jumps off the page of you as like, blue chip prospect, but experience says something as well. He is on a current 3-fight winning streak. He does have 4 knockouts and 8 submissions, so 12 out of 13 finishes. That stands out to you. 5 arm triangles there, 3 rear naked chokes, 9 first-round finishes, so that does stand out to you as well. 4 wins in 40 seconds or less, and of his losses, 5 of 6 of them have come by finish. Not that that's necessarily great, but at least it shows you that he's not a guy that's just going to cruise to the cards, and that's certainly not what Dana likes to see. Meanwhile, Dylan Lockhart comes back at the plus 140 underdog. He's been a pro since 2016, currently on a 3-fight winning streak, 3 knockouts, 1 submission, 3 first-round finishes as well. So we've got some finishers here. Dan Tom, when you started looking at these featherweights, which one stood out to you?
It's a really close fight. I really like this division. It's going to be competitive. You still got the pop, but you also got the speed and technicality. Both guys on paper, John, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belts. When I watched the tape, they looked like they handled themselves accordingly. They work well from top side. So I think the reason why TJ Brown is favored is because it may come down to the striking. And although I really do like Lockhart's boxing, he's really got that kind of crisp boxing on the feet. And then we'll go to his Jiu-Jitsu, maybe like kind of a Manny Bermudez-esque, another East Coast prospect there. But, TJ Brown, he uses more the Muay Thai. He'll switch his stances up a little bit. Leg kicks go up high. A little more variety there. I think that's what the odds makers in public are seeing. And I'll go with TJ Brown for that reason as well.
Like TJ Brown here. I kind of agree with all your analysis there. I think another thing, too, is that I think we're likely for a finish here, right? I mean, sometimes these bets are a little tough sometimes on winners or losers, but you may have the distance as well. And I think, honestly, this one seems like it's set up for a finish.
I think so too. Looking at their records, and they've been there, they've made the mistakes before. I think these guys, for better or worse, are really going to put it out there.
Yeah. In terms of a contract, I think the only thing we'll worry about is if TJ Brown does win, again, that 13-6 record. It's not bad. I mean, there's something to be said for experience, but I don't know. I know that sounds maybe terrible that I'm even saying that, but I think Dana likes those undefeated records, maybe those one-loss records, and 13-6. I do wonder if there's going to be a little bit of a kind of a bias against him if he ends up winning the fight.
You're right. You don't want to judge a fighter off a record, but in context of the show and what we're actually doing here, with a record like that, you got to imagine, okay, you better be a hell of an action fighter and be, that fight of the night guy where, it doesn't really matter if you win or lose, we want to see you fight. So if you've got that role, then great. Then who cares what your record is? But you're right, it does put a little bit of pressure there.
Got to do something really special,
Yeah.
right? All right, let's check in with our man Nolan King out there on the East Coast, as we always do. Nolan King said, having seen both men compete here on the New England circuit, I feel like Dylan Lockhart has the higher potential ceiling. But potential is indicative of where you're going, not where you are. Well said, by the way. At this point in time, I believe Brown presents issues for Lockhart, especially on the feet. I'm taking Brown via 3-round decision. Okay, so he doesn't like my stoppage asset. But he's taking him by decision. Unfortunately, his record will deter a contract from the UFC brass. So he's picking Brown. He's picking him by decision, but he thinks probably the record might be a hindrance. What do you think? You like Brown as well. Do you think he gets a finish, or do you see this potentially going 3 rounds as well?
I was agreeing with you on the finishing just by looking at their records.
Mm-hmm.
You play the numbers there. But if you do kind of factor in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belts, it's really, I don't see either guy getting submitted soberly. So if there's a finish, it's going to have to either happen on the feet or be sparked off from the feet. So, I could actually see a good percentage of this going to decision. If you got like plus money decision, maybe that way. But a gun to the head, I still suspect that there'll be a finish.
Makes sense. Yeah, styles make fights, right? Sometimes it's easy to just look at those raw finishing numbers, but you got to match them up together to really come to the decision. All right, from there, we go to the heavyweights. The heavyweights in the little cage. We always like it. It's got the 25-foot cage there. It's only 5 feet shorter on each side, than the 30-foot cage that you use in a UFC pay-per-view. But I'm telling you, once you put heavyweights in there, I mean, we've seen the math on it. It's a huge distance, or I guess size difference overall when you talk about overall space. But what we've got here, Ben Sosoli out of Australia, Dustin Johnson out of Canada, so we've got a bit of an international affair and a couple things that stand out to you. We'll start with Ben Sosoli. Of course, he was on The Ultimate Fighter. He was on Tough 28, a member of Team Gastelum there. He lost to Juan Espino, which I remember at the time thinking like, well, that doesn't look very good, but Juan Espino obviously ended up proving us he was a little bit better than we thought he was. Sosoli's been a pro since 2013. He's currently on a 4-fight winning streak. Now, that doesn't include the loss in the Ultimate Fighter because that's an exhibition bout. That happened in the middle of that 4-fight winning streak. But of his 7-2 record, 6 knockouts, 4 first-round finishes. A former rugby player as well. We've seen what those type of athletes can do lately as they've been developing. And by the way, Sosoli a plus 105, so just a very, very tight line there. Meanwhile, Dustin Johnson, minus 135 favorite, fighting out of Canada, pro since 2014. He does have the undefeated record, 5-0. 3 knockouts, 1 submission by rear naked choke, 2 first-round finishes. Now, the thing that's going to stand out to you right away when you see these athletes step in the cage is that Dustin Johnson is 6'5" tall. He is massive. Meanwhile, Sosoli not small at 6 foot, but just the way their body types are, the way their frames match up, you're going to see a big difference. Give me your take, Dan Thomas. You started breaking down these guys. What stood out to you?
I like this fight. I can see why Dustin Johnson is the favorite. The odds makers in public love that. We just talked about records, John. They love that undefeated number. By the way, Johnson, doesn't it sound like a New England guy that's picking on you for taking a low blow? What's the matter? You get hit in your joints in there?
I got to be honest with you. There was something a little funny. I didn't get that take out of it. Well done, Dan Tom. Well done.
A little New England shout, at least for our New England colleagues there. But anyways, no, I could see why he moves really athletically. But again, you look at the sample size of the undefeated record. Who's he facing? What are their records? The divisions? How long are these fights going? And his style, albeit much more athletic, and he's definitely going to have that movement advantage over the more plodding Sosoli. How does that fare as the fight gets longer? Does it fare better against a more plodding opponent, or when his tricks run out, do we start to see him kind of run out of ideas? And another thing you said, John, small cage. Yep. That height difference, that reach is all great, but how many guys in MMA really use their reach? Even a heavyweight, where we've seen, Stefan Struves, try how many times. It's not always a given just because you have that reach. And when you're a tall guy and your back gets to that cage, your head goes straight up. And against a boxer, a southpaw boxer like Sosoli, I think we could see an upset. So I'll actually take the dog here. He's got a long way to travel, but I'll take him.
I like it. Yeah, it is a ways to do it, but he definitely packs the power. Let's check in with Nolan King on this one because the heavyweight fights are definitely going to be fun. When you think of heavyweights, you think of knockouts. This fight will fit that mold. I have a hard time seeing this fight hitting the midway point, and I think it comes down to who can land the biggest blow first. The more compact Sosoli has, the better chance of being the guy to conquer the task. I'm taking him via first-round knockout. With the win, he'll be the newest addition to the UFC's heavyweight roster. Interesting. So knockout, he's picking Sosoli there as well. I understand it. I totally get the pick. I really do. I'm a little bit torn on this one as well. I like Joynson's the size and the frame that he brings in there. But like I said, Sosoli, I kind of judged him early on The Ultimate Fighter, and then it turns out that, Juan Espino was better than I had originally guessed. So, do you think the early knockout as well?
Yeah, first round knockout. I don't think he's going to let Sosoli get comfortable in that small cage there, or I think Sosoli is going to let his opponent get comfortable, I should say, in the small cage.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, well, that should be a fun fight. Like I said, heavyweights in the small cage, always a little bit fun. And as we've always said, heavyweights always kind of have one step up on the competition here as far as getting into the UFC, as far as getting the UFC contract. No secret, heavyweight kind of the thinnest division on a global scale. So if you can make an impression, I think you already kind of have one foot in the door.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the next fight. It is in the lightweight division, a little bit of an international flair here as well. From fighting out of South Korea, Sang Hoon Yu, a pro since 2017. He brings an undefeated mark of 5-0 to the cage. 3 knockouts, 2 of those are first-round finishes, so he's shown a little bit of an ability to compete there. By the way, fighting out of Busan, South Korea, which, if you haven't looked at the schedule, UFC visiting there December 21st. So I do kind of wonder if he happens to prove victorious, if he's got a leg up, just so they can bring another local guy in there. Meanwhile, Peter Barrett, pro since 2014, just 2-1 in his last 3 fights, also 2-3 in his last 5, so he kind of limps in here a little bit in terms of record. He does, have 7 knockouts to his record, a 10-3 total record overall. 2 submissions, one's a guillotine, one's a rear naked choke, 7 first-round finishes. Now, I will point out that record, but I will also point out, speaking of Nolan King, he wrote a great story on Pete Barrett and what he went through. If you haven't had a chance to read that, once we get done with this, check it out. You'll have time before we go live at the top of the hour on ESPN Plus with the actual fights. But had his first career loss, but then also had some losses in his family as well. His brother, his father was battling depression. And I think that's one of those interesting things that stands out, where if you're just looking at a fighter on paper and you go, well, what happened to this losing streak here? Did he lose it? Did he quit focusing? But when you kind of find out what was going on behind the scenes, I think you really start to find out, okay, hey, there's an explanation for a lot of what we saw here. So, by the way, the odds makers have this essentially as a pick-em. So I think that's interesting as well when you talk about somebody that's still early in their career but has the undefeated mark versus somebody that doesn't look that great on paper lately in terms of record, but they're looking at even. So, Dan Tom, as you started looking at these 2 fighters, what stood out to you?
Great layout there, John. I initially came in leaning toward the Korean. Again, kind of like the odds makers in public, the undefeated record's going to catch your eye. More so Busan, South Korea. That's a bit of a hotbed down there. The fighters that come out of there are well-trained. There's a lot of competitive rooms, and we just see, a competitive fighting spirit from boxing to MMA from Korean fighters. The problem, though, and I'll reference Dong Young Ma, who used to be known as the second Dong Young Kim, if you remember him.
Right.
The problem is when these guys do well and come from those hotbeds, they almost can be rushed to this, rushed to market, so to speak, which is kind of the danger of this show. Even Dana White admits and talks about it himself, hence developmental deals and whatnot. So I actually almost worry if this guy does come out here, looks too good, and we kind of see another case. Dong Young Ma, he's done pretty decently, but he came in and I think suffered like 2 knockout losses. Was like 3 and 4, something like that. So, that being said, also, you go look at Barrett's story at first, looking at his record, then you read the story. Okay, that makes sense, and we got to raise our hand here, right? There's a little bit of bias when Nolan King does these features.
He's done some great features.
Oh man, it's hard. It's hard not to root for these fighters, is it not?
Yeah.
So I want to preface that with my pick here. I actually got swayed the other way because, again, if I'm going to pick apart Joynson's 5-0 record from Canada, how can I not, at least bat an eye at the South Koreans' 5-0 record here for the same reason. Again, not exactly notable competition. We don't have a huge sample size yet, whereas Barrett's been there. I'm going to side with the guy that's been there in this one.
A lot of great points there. You're right about that. You could definitely be rushed to it, and man, it would be an amazing opportunity. Can you imagine coming to the States, winning a fight and then getting on the UFC in your hometown? I mean, that would be an amazing story. But Slippery Pete has quite the story as well behind him. So it is a great nickname. All right, let's turn to Nolan King, find out what his opinion is. Well, it's funny because I just actually copy paste these as well because I don't like to be spoiled.
Okay, you too.
I know you don't like to hear him. Yeah. So I literally just blindly copy and paste the notes he sent me. So I read them live for the first time as well.
Nice.
So we'll find out if he had that that bias also. Barrett versus you has barn burner written all over it. Win or lose, Barrett comes to fight. That can actually get him in trouble at times, and he can become his own worst enemy. I think Barrett's experience will come into play and will earn him a 3-round decision from the judges. While Barrett won't have a dominant performance, the bout will be exciting enough to tickle the fancy of UFC President Dana White. Barrett will earn a contract.
Wow.
So he's kind of laying out a war, a battle type scenario, and we'll see how much of the backstory goes into it. We know that Dana White has said he likes to come in blind, but he watches those pre-fight features. We haven't seen that feature yet. I've got to imagine that story plays in a little bit, but if that doesn't tug at the heartstrings a little bit, we'll see.
Right now.
So what do you think? I mean, you're leaning towards Barrett. Do you like the idea of this being kind of a back and forth battle and going the distance?
I do. One, for what Nolan said, Barrett's experience, but also, again, not to stereotype where someone's from, but we're stereotyping in a positive way with proven sample size, and those Koreans come to fight and they're tough to put away. So I don't hate that at all. And I will say I'm surprised he's going all the way and picking the contract. But I will say, as far as dog picks go, I do feel better about my dog picks when me and Nolan are online, and when all three of us are online, then I feel even better, of course.
No question. All right. Well, fun fights to start out the night. As you said, I mean, I think we're hyped about all these, but I think we're both really leaning on the co-main and the main event as the two really fights to pay attention to. First one up, both of them, by the way, in the middleweight division. First one up, Kalen Hill versus Impa Kasanganay, and the UFC was kind enough to share the opening packages for this fight, and we'll get to these two men in a second, but hear a little bit about their backstory first.
A UFC contract would mean the world to me. I work hard day in, day out towards this. I don't put any excuses before training. This comes first. My name is Kalen Hill. I fight out of Jog Center in Los Angeles, California. I was raised by a single mother. She helped me tremendously. Just a true inspiration. She played both roles for me, a mother, and a father figure. I got in trouble at the age of 17, and I went to juvenile hall. Going to juvenile hall, it taught me that there's consequences to your actions. It taught me that, you can't really be careless in your choices. You have to live according and responsible, or you're going to, face the consequences. Whoever's standing across the cage from me, I really don't care what your name is. I have everything to lose at that point. This opportunity, it doesn't come around to everyone. I appreciate this opportunity so much, and just, show them all that I got and give it all that I got. If this fight stays on the feet, Impa's getting knocked out. If this fight goes to the ground, I'm getting back up and knocking Impa out. This fight will be done fast.
My family's from Congo in Central Africa. It's a beautiful country, but it's very torn up right now. I wasn't born in Congo, but I say I was born in me, and my goal is to be able to be an ambassador. My name is Impa Kasanganay. I'm 25 years old, and I fight out of Jimbo in Gastonia, North Carolina. Being my origins in Congo, it means a lot to me, to see a lot of African fighters like Kamaru Usman, Israel Adesanya, Francis Ngannou.
Goes the ream! Francis Ngannou!
For me, it's inspiring because when I watch them, I see myself in them. I believe we're all one tribe, one soil. I am proud to be African, and it's in my blood, and just to see these guys do it, it's what kind of gets me up every day too, I started training a year and a half, 2 years ago, right after I graduated college, and starting this year, I made my pro debut. I'm 5-0 now, within 5 months. I love to fight, I love to stay active, and half my fights, I believe, are my finish now, which has been fun. And I'm doing what I love. Tonight, I'm going to show the MMA world an introduction to who Chilobo is, the mighty warrior under God. Step into the best organization in the world, ready to make an impact, and somebody who's going to do what he loves for the rest of his life.
All right, Kalen Hill, Impa Kasanganay. I think this fight is very intriguing. Let me just say, what else is very intriguing? I'm going to peel back the curtain a little bit. While the video is playing, UFC exec Craig Brassari, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, and Invicta FC president Shannon Knapp came back here. They were taking a little tour of the facility. So, hey, maybe we'll get an Invicta FC event out here someday soon. All right, let's talk about this fight, why we're so excited about it. Because it's funny, on the record, now this is two undefeated fighters. That always is fun to me. Both of them come in with a 5-0 record. But the odds makers have this as a wide range here. Kalen Hill is a minus 360, Impa Kasanganay as a plus 270. So you may say, John, well, why is that so intriguing? All right, well, let me lay this out for you. Kalen Hill, the favorite, pro since 2017. He's got, as we said, the undefeated record, 3 knockouts. And the truth is, you may have seen all 3 of his knockouts. His first-round finishes, every single one of them happened under the LFA banner. Every single one of them made it to SportsCenter as a top highlight. One of them took place in 1:31, one in 1:18, and another in just 11 seconds. So this guy is all action and can end things very quickly. He looks like the real deal. But this kind of mystery man that's coming in here, in Kasangane, his debut as a pro was 7 months ago. That's right. He's been a professional just in 2019, 7 months ago, fighting out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Well, actually, he's in North Carolina now, but that's where he was born, in Fort Lauderdale. But his parents came from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, so you're talking about kind of another one of this African invasion. It's happening out of South Korea. I promise I know my geography.
Hey, we're being invaded from all the countries this week, John, so forgiveness.
This African invasion, that this renaissance that the UFC is seeing. He does have 1 knockout, 1 submission among those 2 first-round finishes, so he does have a few more decisions to his name that Kalen Hill does. But, I mean, just a mystery man like that can step in here. Scott Holtzman is actually here with him and was singing his praises and saying he's helped out a lot. So, listen, we know the favorite. We know the underdog. It's crazy. Dan Tom, I mean, I know you're excited about this one as well, so tell me what you saw when you started breaking this one down.
You're right. The line was kind of the first thing that jumped off the page, but I was familiar with Hill's name, and, it's a no-brainer if you were familiar or saw those highlights. Like, oh, yeah, this is for sure a Contender Series guy.
Right.
And you got to imagine the odds makers in public saw that, pushed the line that way, whereas, Kasegna, he said 2019, only a couple months experience. He's not going the distance, and with the right matchups, I think he could produce similar highlight reels too. The problem is, as much as I love upsets, John, I almost don't want this guy to do well, because I feel like he's going to have to clear such a bar where if he wins, I don't know if he's going to get signed because of his experience, and he's going to have to win it in super impressive fashion if he wants to follow the footsteps of the light heavyweight gentleman who received the developmental deal first of this season, and they don't give those out too often. So I wonder what a win for Kasegna would look like here, but I got to go with Hill.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because they both have the same records, but their records were built very differently, right?
Yes.
Like Kasangane doing it in such a short amount of time, I could see Dana White very quickly saying, listen, man, we were impressed, but you're too early. Maybe a developmental deal, or maybe you just got to go off and cut your chops somewhere else. But Hill, meanwhile, I know he's only 5-0, but to think that those 3 wins have been on SportsCenter, I mean, this is ESPN Plus. You got a little brand synergy there. I could see him saying that maybe you're ready. Let's hear what Nolan King says. He said, while Hill is known for his viral knockouts, he's still improving and he's evolving, as evident by his last fight at LFA 63. He did go to a decision in that fight. A lot of people thought they were looking for the viral knockout again. That said, I do think he possesses the skill at this point in time to land a big shot on a very unproven Kasangane. I'm picking Hill via contract-earning TKO in the 2nd round. You like that analysis, Dan Tom? Does he get the finish? Is that how Hill gets here? And does he maybe get a contract?
I agree with both those. I think this is going to be contract heavy if he gets the finish, and I think he does get the finish. And just one thing I want to add on to his 5-0 is one other thing I liked about Hill is that he trains at Black House MMA, so he's actually getting good jiu-jitsu training or wrestling training, Bolt Wrestling. Shout out to Kenny Johnson there. Well-trained fighters he's got to go with. So
no doubt. All right, well, that could be fireworks. And like I said, the mystery man versus the viral knockout artist. I mean, I think that's a lot of fun there. Meanwhile, the main event here. I don't want to say we're leaning towards one guy, but there's a very, very nice prospect here that I think a lot of people are high on. Let's meet both the fighters here. It is Duško Todorović versus Teddy Ash in our middleweight featured fight. Here's a little bit about their stories coming in.
When I was 18 years old, I was in a canoe in the river with 3 of my friends. The river that we swim in, all the time. We were in the canoe that we capsized. 2 of us had swam to shore, and 2 of my best friends drowned. From that moment on, it was life-consuming change. My name's Teddy Bear Ash. I'm 29 years old. My goal is to come to Contender Series, win in dominant fashion, and move into the UFC and fight the toughest guys in the world. Fighting has become an outlet for me, and it got me out of a dark hole that I was stuck in. And it motivates me. It's got a fire inside me that propels me forward to keep on fighting and getting better. And I'm ready for the big show and to break through and show everyone who I am and what I'm really about. I think a lot about that day in the river. I almost lost my life with my friends who had drowned. There was a point in the river I had actually stopped swimming and I went under, and I knew I was like, I'm dead right now. But something inside me just wouldn't let me stop swinging my arms as hard as I could, and I'm very, very lucky that I swam to shore. Sometimes I think about, what it would be like to give up in a cage or in a fight or in the gym. Why would I give up then? And if I didn't give up that day, I was fighting for my life, why would I give up now? So when it comes to fighting, I've got heart. I have absolutely no quit. There's no making me break. I have no breaking point, and I'm going to be coming at you the whole time.
Serbia is a little bit like off the map when we speak of MMA. I think we can get to the UFC and stay there, That is the thing I would like to prove, that you can do it from Serbia, You don't need to go over the board and to some fancy camps and stuff like that, I believe it can be done from Serbia. My name is Duško Todorović. I'm fighting out of Belgrade, Serbia, out of Sekutor Academy. My goal is to become a first Serbian UFC champion. Getting the UFC contract would mean a lot to me. I'm a proof that, coming out of Serbia, I can live my dream fighting in the UFC. I'm an 8-0 in my professional career right now with 6 first-round finishes, and 2 of my fights have went to second round, so no third rounds for me so far. My opponent for the Middleweight Contender series is Teddy Ash. I believe he's gonna give his all, but I don't think that he can stop me. I believe I'm on another level than he is. I think I can stop him in the first round, regardless of TKO or submission. It's my dream to show everyone that it can be done from Serbia. Srpski MMA je ovde u UFC-u na svetskom nivou i potrudit ću se da ostane tu za uvek.
All right, let me make it very, very clear that we're not writing off anybody in this fight. You can't do that in the fight game. But I will say there is buzz around Duško Todorović, 25 years old, pro since 2015, an undefeated 8-0 record. All of those are finishes. 5 knockouts, 3 submissions, 6 first-round finishes, 5 of those in a minute 41 or less. His last fight, a December 18th TKO in the first round over Michel Pereira, who I think we're all really excited about. He's in the UFC now, and he looks phenomenal. He also beat Alexander Popek early in his career as well. That's a kind of a highly touted guy as well. So this guy on paper at 25 years old looks like the real deal. He is the minus 400 favorite. But Teddy Ash is not here to just give anything away. He is a plus 310 underdog on the return, so if you like that, you can make some money. He has been a pro since 2013, currently on a 2-fight winning streak. He's 8-1 in his last 9, the only loss during that stretch, to a man with a phenomenal nickname, nonstop action-packed Dominique Steele. Out of his 14 wins, 10 knockouts, 1 submission, 7 first-round finishes. We said he lost to Dominique Steele. He does have an earlier career win over Dominique Steele as well, so they split that series. He also has wins over some UFC vets in Seth Pazinski and Victor Valimaki. So not that I'm looking at Teddy Ash and saying the man has no chance here, but, this Todorović looks like the kind of guy that Dana White is looking for, and I think this is his moment to deliver. But tell me, Dan Tom, as you broke this down, is he that deserving of this minus 400 line?
Man, I came in wanting to fade this line because, how many underdogs do we see, thrive here in the Contender Series? And like we said, even though these are prospects, they're not exactly proven all the time, right? So when you see a line, I immediately want to poke holes in that. Remember when the UFC went to Zagreb? You were covering that show, John. And we saw some guys that perhaps were, to put it kindly, maybe rushed to market. Right. So I'm like, okay, this guy's coming from that scene. Sure, he's Serbian. He's training at ATT in Zagreb. But last time we were there, we didn't really see, nothing that impressed me at least. That being said, I went and looked at the tape. I talked to you about this, John. I was pleasantly surprised. I'm a Taekwondo guy, but I'm also a Taekwondo skeptic when it comes to MMA. We don't see people translate it very well. Paul Felder, for example, one of the few, he melds it very well with Muay Thai. But what Duško does is he melds it with just straight up kickboxing and boxing. So he maintains all his quickness from his kicks to his punches, and he puts it together really impressively. Oh, and by the way, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and has some wrestling background as well.
Fantastic. And 25 years old to boot. So all the upside there, man. Like I said, I don't want to be disrespectful with Teddy Ash here. I love underdog stories, but this is just a guy that has stars next to his name. I know people are excited about him. Yeah. Nolan King weighed in. He said, "It's nice to know the final fight of Season 3 will likely end in a finish. Both of these men aren't a big fan of decisions. Todorović is a solid up-and-comer whose skills have already progressed to a high level. Ash is more of a veteran type who has encountered and largely overcome his share of adversity. I think Todorović is one of the better pound-for-pound prospects of the season. So with that, I'm leaning towards Todorović winning inside the distance via strikes and earning a contract in the process." Dan Tom, I can't disagree with much there that said. I like the finish here. I like the contract here. What say you?
I'm predicting 3 contracts tonight, and I'm predicting that Dushko gets one.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think it's going to be a great finish. Last week wasn't a bad week, but to have that one contract, I think we were kind of like, so maybe we're going to finish with a bang here. Who knows? Look, UFC President Dana White hasn't said he won't do any more Contender Series this year. In fact, if he had his way, he'd probably do one every week of the year. The matchmakers have said, hey, let's calm down. Let's let the talent pool replenish a little bit, and then we'll fire it back up in 2020. Either way, listen, it's been a fun season kind of breaking into the UFC Apex. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this, pre-fight breakdown every week. We've enjoyed doing it. It's been kind of fun. It lets us brush up on the prospects a little bit and get us excited about what we're about to see. And I'm excited about what we're about to see now. So the last week, it seems, maybe we'll see inside the UFC Apex. It'll be at top of the hour on ESPN Plus, and of course, we'll have full results. We'll have highlights. We'll have all that stuff. You will grade all the winners. We'll have that up on the website tomorrow at MMA Junkie. Let's go check out some fights.
Tonight I'm showing the MMA world an introduction to who Chilobo is. Ready to make an impact, and I'm doing what I love.
A UFC contract would mean the world to me. Whoever's standing across the cage from me, I really don't care what your name is. I have everything to lose at that point.
My goal is to come here, win in dominant fashion, and move into the UFC and fight the toughest guys in the world.
My goal is to become a first Serbian UFC champion. I will show Dana what I'm made of and that I deserve the contract.
Watching the world's most intense job interview. It's Dana White's Contender Series.
Future stars are vying for that UFC contract. They have a chance literally to change their lives forever.
After the long hours in the gym. After the years of grueling training.
What determination they have.
After a lifetime pursuing hopes and dreams. There comes the moment where a contender can make dreams come true. 100 fighters.
Welcome to the Contender Series. These fighters know what gets them to the big show.
10 nights.
One shot and it is over. Wow.
Whoa, he's out.
That's it. Action-packed.
One shot to impress the boss and earn a UFC contract. This is Dana White's Contender Series.